Greetings, welcome to Self-Assessment 9 for Lesson 9, Problem 1. This is a quick review to see if you remember how to factor a quadratic. So factor each of the following quadratic expressions, write your answers in factored form. So one of the big things here that I want you to remember from this is that you're writing in factored form, and nowhere do you see anywhere on this slide the word solve until I just wrote it down. What that means is you are not going to be using the zero product property here. You are not going to be trying to find the values of x that give you the solution to this thing set equal to 0. Make sure you keep that straight. Unless you see the word solve there, do not try to solve, okay? All right, so back to the ranch with that word of warning out of the way, we need to factor this. So let's see. So we know that in the undo FOIL world, that the first terms must have come from the product of x times x. So we'll put those in there because that gave me an x squared. Now I need two numbers, and when I multiply them together give me an 8, and when I add them together give me a negative 6. So I know that 2 times 4 gives me 8 and 2 plus 4 gives me 6, but it can't be positive. They're going to both have to be negative because why? Well, because when I add a negative 2 and a negative 4, I get a negative 6x, okay? So hopefully that was fairly straightforward. All right, let's take a look at part B here. Similar sort of beast. We know first of all that our product of our first here are going to be an x times x, or an x squared. Product of my last came out to be a negative 2. So I need two numbers that when I multiply them together give me negative 2. When I add them together give me a positive 1. So I think if I put in a positive 2 and a negative 1, that should work. So let's see, 2x times, that's our product of our inners, and our outers is a negative 1x. Add those together, I get back a positive 1x. So boom, that one checks. Let me come back over here for this one real quick and just remind you that that's what I did in my head here also. I took negative 2x, negative 4x. I know that came out to negative 6x, so I got it right. Okay, on C, we just have a greatest common factor. The greatest common factor is probably, of all the factoring tricks you're going to learn, the most important one. Second to that would be this one over here, but we'll talk about that in a minute. So factoring out the greatest common factor here, looks like 3x is our greatest common factor. What's going to be left behind? Well, 3 goes into 15 5 times. X goes into x squared, gets me back an x. Minus 3x divided by 3x gives me a 1. In other words, notice that what I did is once I figured out what my GCF here was, I divided that into each one of the terms in the original polynomial to figure out what's going to be inside of my parentheses. Quick mental remultiplication to check it. 3x times 5x gives me 15x squared, and 3x times a negative 1 gives me a negative 3x. So boom, that one checks also. Okay, so D is the second most important thing to remember from factoring, and that is that if you're given a squared minus b squared, that's the difference of two squares, which factors to a plus b times a minus b, sometimes referred to as a set of conjugates. So that actually turns out to be a very useful pattern to memorize. You'll see that in many more mathematics courses. So make sure you got that bad boy done, okay? So back at the ranch here, one way of thinking about this is that this is x squared minus 3 squared. So there's my a and there's my b. My a is x, my b is 3. So this is going to be x plus 3 times x minus 3. Okay, so let's go ahead and mentally remultiply that to see if that came out right. X times x gets me an x squared. Yep. Plus 3x for the middles, minus 3x for the outers. Those are going to sum to 0, as I suspected, because there is no middle term here. And a plus 3 times a minus 3 gets me a negative 9. So that one checks also. Okay, so this textbook was rather light on the factoring. They're assuming that you've seen it before. I agree with that, downplay it a bit. But that said, make sure that you know how to bring out a GCF. That's a really important skill to take forward with you in this class. And make sure that you've got this multiplication pattern memorized. That's really important also. Okay, well, I'll see you back here for number 2 if you're so inclined.